Yima Sen, who is the Director General, Northern Elders Forum, and we also have with us Richard Nenga, who is a chieftain of the APC and former National Organizing Secretary of the CPC. Gentlemen, you're welcome to Sunrise City this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we saw the Northern Elders Forum release their statement after the meeting yesterday. You also saw the response of the president's spokesperson, Mr. Femi Adesina. In fact, he released a statement talking about a general without troops. He says Professor Ango Abdullahi on Sunday signed a long-winding statement on many issues relating to the North and purportedly to the country. He signed under the banner of Northern Elders Forum. You would think that the body was a conglomeration of true elders, but the truth is that NEF is just Ango Abdullahi, and Ango Abdullahi is NEF. How do you respond to that?
Well, I have read the two statements, the one from my organization and the response from the presidency. Well, I'm supposed to have attended that meeting, but I had to attend another meeting of critical importance in Benue State. So I think that in some circumstances, especially as elders, you need to walk a tightrope between maybe anger and moderation. Now, the topic that was discussed at that meeting, which has to do with security, national security in Nigeria, is a topic that is very touching. And if you're not careful, you can get very angry. You can also get very bitter. And sometimes when that happens, moderation becomes a problem. If I were at that meeting, I probably would have tried to moderate the outcome of that meeting in terms of what was produced as a statement. Because when you don't moderate a statement of that nature, it can lead to a lot of inflammation of already traumatized environment, which is what I believe we have now. There's no doubt that we have
you think it was angry? It was an angry statement or a bitter statement?
Well, I mean, from reading, looking at the semantics of it all, there's anger there. And like I said, if you don't manage anger very well, it can lead to, an inflammation of an already traumatized environment, which in this case has been caused by the security challenges of this country. So I think that there is that kind of reality in this statement. Now, the response from the presidency, well, it is not true that the NEF is a one-man organization. Professor Ango Abdullahi happens to be the convener and the chairman of the organization. So sometimes he takes the heat for some of the issues that the NEF is involved in. We have a large membership, and we have very responsible people with great credibility. In 2015, we contributed substantially to the regime change, and we had a lot of networking internationally and nationally to ensure that Nigeria moved from what we considered to be a failing government to something better. I think over the time, they developed some critiques of the performance of the president by our organization. And, critiques can come, they can be nice, and some of them can get nasty.
So this is just the Northern Elders Forum, expressing its own view on, what it perceives to be the current situation.
Yeah, and it's not just this time that we have expressed these views. Maybe this particular statement has been very, very strong. We have expressed our concerns about security and national development and governance and all of those issues. But I think that this has been one of our strongest statements. And I'm saying that in a statement of this nature, you need to walk a tightrope between anger and moderation.
Well, let me come to you then, Mr. Menenga. Just last week, we were here talking about the security situation, and you admitted that it wasn't looking good in a lot of areas. Places that did not have internally displaced persons camps hitherto now have these camps. And for some people, they will say that what the Northern Elders Forum has said is no different from what a lot of people have been saying, especially when you look at the solutions that people have been bringing up, to try and combat the situation. Why do you think it has not been received very well?
You see, it is good that the statement is coming from the Northern Elders Forum. You know, you cannot cure a sickness if you don't know the roots. For any sickness to be cured, you have to cure the roots. There are some things that give birth to the insecurity issues we have in the country now. We believe it was poverty and ignorance. So now, respected people like Ango Abdullahi, an elder statesman who has been into various positions of leadership, for him to have come out to say this, it is good that they should be asked what role have they played in tackling the challenges that led to this insecurity. But from what they called for the removal of the service chiefs, like I earlier said, I don't see that as the major problem. Although it is good if new people are brought on board, but I don't see that as the major problem. Because even if they are removed, they are like, it is like solving the problem halfway. We have to go back and look what led to the emergence of this insurgency. And you see, the president has created the Northeast Development Commission to rebuild the place and do other things. It has a long mandate. So I think it is part of the peace process that led to the creation of this agency. And it was just created some few months ago. So I think it's too early for somebody to just come out and say Buhari has totally failed.
It's too early. The president is in his 5th year. I mean, he's served 4 years now. He ran for a fresh term in office, and he's been given. This is the following year. The elections were in 2019. It's almost another year. So we're almost 5 years into the Buhari presidency, so to speak. How can it be too early?
No, why I say it's early is this, in the context of the creation of Northeast Development Commission. You know, he has been tackling this thing since he came on board. And like I said earlier, the issue of rampant bombing across the Federation has drastically reduced. For example, here in Abuja, we are always witnessing explosion of bombs left, right, and center. But now it has drastically reduced. He was tackling that thing seriously, and it is part of the process that he established the Northeastern Development Commission. So it is the Northeastern Development Commission that I say it has just been established, and I'm sure it will greatly contribute in tackling most of the security challenges we have. I'm not saying that Buhari's government is fresh, it should be given time. It is that agency which will also contribute in bringing the peace process. Because if those who are displaced are settled, and the last time I came here, you asked me what is my agency doing to help the kids that have been sent out of school due to the agency, due to the insurgents. And I'm sure this agency, too, is towing the same line with what my office is doing.
Now, let me come back to you, Mr. Sen. I'm looking at, elements of the statement. You say that it's one of the strongest statements you've released just yet. Would you say in every ramification, the statement was a fair one? You admit that it is strong. Would you say it was a fair statement when you look at the situation vis-a-vis what the government is doing?
Questions of life and death and danger posed to existence and property are very serious questions. And I think that where we are today in Nigeria calls for, I think, strong concern. And if statements come out like that, then you're not going to blame those who are issuing those statements. I know some of our members who have had personal experiences with challenges of insecurity. Professor Ango Abdullahi himself was attacked on the road at some point somewhere in Bauchi State. And I know people who are close to our members who have had their families kidnapped, and there needed to be interventions. So when things reach your door and you think that enough is not being done, then of course you can become angry. and you can make a statement like that. As to the fairness of the statement, the question is, does it reflect the reality on the ground? The security challenges in Nigeria today are unacceptable, considering the possibilities that Nigeria has. And I think that the presidency itself needs to be assisted to deal with the questions of security and national development. I don't think that the presidency is getting the best of the talent that exists in this country. I have worked in the presidency twice, as a young man in the Shagari presidency and under the Obasanjo presidency. I know that if you have a strong capacity in a presidency, you can begin to deal with some of these issues. If that capacity is lacking, it shows. A problem of security goes beyond policing and guns and bullets and attack helicopters. It's a comprehensive and holistic question that has to do with the welfare of the people and the development, poverty, and the broad development questions. And these are things that require some of your best resource persons that you can get in the country, and there are many of them here. Are they being used by the presidency? I don't think so.
Largely, we continue to concentrate on the federal government for obvious reasons. They are largely the ones who hold the apparatus of the security agencies. But it would seem, for some people say that, and this is from security analysts, who say that, yes, perhaps the service chiefs should be changed because of the laws. I don't know which one of the laws they cite now, but they believe that they've been there for quite a while. However, they think that's not where the problem lies. They think that it's with the security architecture itself. And they also believe that there are about 23 other security agencies that don't understand why the focus has been solely on 5. Do you know why there is a fixation with the service chiefs being asked to leave?
Well, I mean, they're in the front line of the security mechanism that we have in this country. They're the front line. So people are going to look at them first. But from what I have said, we should understand that security management is a holistic thing that requires so many inputs. Some of them are not dry, militaristic or police types of interventions. And I'm telling you about the need for a comprehensive, holistic, and system-wide approach to managing security, because some of the security challenges are tied to development policy and to questions of poverty, questions of unemployment, questions of how do the various components in the federal system operate. Do we have some synergy between local government, states, and the federal government in terms of managing our security? Just look at this case. You have the Army, you have the Air Force, you have the Navy, you have the police, you have civil defense, you have customs, you have immigration, you have DSS. And in the states, you have governors, you have
local government chairman.
Local government chairman, you have traditional rulers. In each of the 774 local governments in this country, you have a DPO or its equivalent, you have a DSS representative, you have traditional rulers and the local government chairman. Are you telling me that in a day that the country cannot know what is going on in this security times everywhere? I mean, from my analysis, you know, that it's very easy to know where security challenges exist. And because you are able to tell that and you're able to look at early warning, you have early warning mechanisms, you'll be able to tell if there's going to be an attack here or who is a strange person in each community and so on.
Yeah, but you also know that if there is a weak link, it's not going to work like that. So far, it would seem that there's been a huge focus on the federal government. It seems like we're exonerating the states and leaving them out of this.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That, I mean, the whole thing builds up from the local government level, the community level, up to the federal government. The federal government in Abuja only knows what is happening in the community if that information is fed to it. So if you have a DPO, if you have DPOs in 774 local governments, and you have DSS operatives in all those local governments, if the information does not reach Abuja, then something is wrong somewhere, isn't it?
No, the point I'm making is, so far so good. It looks like the mechanisms at the state and local government levels, we know that they are almost non-existent. Yes, we have DPOs there, but have we taken a look at what the police stations, for instance, in rural communities look like?
Well, I mean, that amounts to a system failure, and I mean, it does exist. I mean, we have a police system, you may not have enough personnel, but it does exist.
The system failure did not come today, did it?
Well, of course. So why did we, for example, from the point of view of the Northern Elders Forum, insist on a regime change in 2015? Because we thought that we could do better. Now, why is this failing? And I'm saying that it is failing because you have not appropriately addressed the question of managing the security system from top to bottom. Now, can this be a change even under President Buhari? The answer is yes, it can.
The question I'm asking is, you haven't seen enough efforts being put in that direction to change it?
No, we have not. And I said here earlier that I think that the governance mechanism is deficient.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that? This is where we are.
Well, I agree with Professor so much to an extent because, you see, I think we now need to adopt a wider approach, not just to focus on the service chiefs or the frontline security operatives. As you rightly said, we have 3 tiers of government: the federal, the state, and the local governments. I think the federal government should bring on board all the major stakeholders, the governors, the local government chairmen. As you rightly said, if these people are brought together in a day, we will know what is the problem and we'll know how to resolve it. So the president should use a wider approach. He should use a wider approach to get people involved so as to find the roots, not just finding the roots, but bringing it to an end. Because I believe, as he rightly said, we have brains, we have security experts, we have people. Security is a collective effort. It's not just for the military or the governmental security operatives. The major stakeholders should be brought on board, and in a day, we will know what is happening. It's just a wider approach should be used. There should be inclusiveness. People should be brought across board.
Well, we know that the National Assembly has been very concerned about the security situation. It's been on their front burner since they resumed from recess. Right now, they have inaugurated a committee on constitutional reform, which they do every assembly, with every assembly that sits. One of the things that has bothered them is the fact that only recently, a number of governors are now coming together regionally to try and come up with bodies that will solve the problem. One of the issues that have come up is the fact that there's been no legal backing for this. Some people believe that we cannot run away from state police, that state police will be the way to go. Do you think that the Northern Elders Forum will be able to, have these conversations as well in terms of what the alternatives should be and some of the solutions that are being proposed, and perhaps also put up their stance on it?
We're already involved in those discussions. We have participated in a technical committee that was set up by the northern governors and northern traditional rulers to look at the whole question of restructuring and how you deal with security within the restructuring process. That committee, the technical committee of which I was a member, did its work and is supposed to go to do town hall meetings. By the end of last year, only Gombe State has succeeded in holding a town hall meeting to validate the work of the technical committee. And apart from that, the Northern Elders Forum itself set up a committee to work on restructuring, inclusive of questions of policing. And it has also participated in many other interactions with other groups in the country, both within and outside the North, to deliberate on these kinds of issues. If you ask me personally, my position on state policing is that I do not support state policing. I support local government policing, which we had before in the First Republic. I remember in my community we had something called Tiv Native Authority Police. Now, if you're talking about community policing, the local government police system is closer to the people than the state police system, which is subject to abuse, if you ask me. So yes, we're open to discussions on any question in this country that will lead to a better country, that will lead to justice, that will lead to equity, that will lead to fairness in how we coexist. That is about more than 600 of the ethnic groups in this country, whether people are animist or Christian or Muslim. We're not the only country in the world that has diversity, but we should be able to discuss how we live together in better unison. I think that we are open to that, and we have been doing it.
Okay. But that was not proposed in the statement. I mean, in fact, one of the criticisms that has followed the statement is the fact that it was short on alternatives. Do you want to say perhaps why that was?
Well, there's an assumption that perhaps, you know, when you have been working on a lot of issues, you assume that people know that this is what you've been doing. If I didn't tell you some of the things that we have been doing now, and of course, viewers, if I didn't say so now, many viewers are not aware that this is what we have been doing. I've gone to many fora where I've been told, but they say you people in the north are opposed to restructuring. And I said, but I've said it right here in this studio, that we have been the ones in the forefront of restructuring in this country since 1960. 1963, you had the Western region created, Gawan at the beginning of the war created 12 states, and you know all those kinds of things, the new revenue allocation formula systems. These things have come from leadership that have been essentially from the northern community. So how can the north then be opposed to restructuring? The point really is that we have to sit down and look at the possibility of a national consensus on those issues of restructuring. No group, no state or coalition of states can impose its own version of restructuring on the others.
Exactly. So what is the version? I'm glad that you admit that there are many versions. What is the version of the Northern Elders Forum?
Oh, no, it's very robust areas that I cannot go into the details right now.
Yeah, but at least you can give us a summary.
Well, okay, we believe that, I mean, first of all, we should listen to others in this country. That is a fundamental, our starting point, that we must listen to the concerns and the challenges facing other people. And we believe that, yes, you can decentralize policing, for example. We believe that you can have a stronger federal system where you have a devolution of resources and power to states and local governments. We have not concluded on certain issues, whether we should have a bicameral or unicameral national assembly. But we certainly believe also that you should give more powers to the local governments, you know, away from state control, which we see now, which is already happening. And also that the state assemblies should have greater autonomy.
For some people, all of these issues are peripheral. They believe that at the heart of all of this is the money. And that if we continue a system whereby, I think it was even the vice president who said that recently, that a lot of states are not as productive as they ought to be because there's a focus on Federal Accounts Allocation Committee. He also admitted that the federal government perhaps was not pulling its own weight as well because of the revenue from oil. And people believe that at the heart of our problems is just that's where the problem is. I mean, the problem of the revenue from oil and the fact that, every month our states are sharing revenue from oil. They believe that that is not going to have anything, I mean, it's not going to incentivize productivity. What is the stance of Northern Elders Forum on that?
If I were to give you a position on that, I would tell you that that is a very dry and economistic analysis.
Please be careful. Yeah, the water is going to pour. Sorry to interrupt you. Please go ahead.
I look at that as a very dry and economistic analysis of the problem. You're dealing with a question of political economy.
Yeah.
The politics and the economics of or financial questions here are interrelated. In what kind of system are you talking about a fiscal federal arrangement? He's talking about oil money. We only discovered that in 1956. But before then, from 1940, you had Nigeria. So what was happening to that economy before oil? And we're also going to have a Nigeria, I don't know in what form or shape, after oil. And it's not only oil that is the main resource in this country. Of course, it contributes maybe the lion's share to, of the federal revenue base. But the GDP, our GDP draws its contribution mainly from agriculture at about 40% or so. And the same agriculture employs the highest number of people in this country at about 70% or so. So when you go into a very dry and economistic financial analysis, you're not trying to solve the problem at all. And in any case, what we have now as the revenue allocation system is something that has been modified over the years. And it has come with a lot of inputs from the public and from Nigerians. So I think that we should look at these things holistically and not just from a very dry economistic thing. And in any case, if you're talking about only one commodity or one source of revenue, then you are also not getting it right.
I wish that we could go on with this discussion,
Yes.
but sadly we've totally run out of time. I have to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on Sunrise City this morning. Yima Sen is the Director General of the Northern Elders Forum, and Richard Menenga is the Chieftain of the APC and also former National Organizing Secretary of the CPC.